And if we move from North London over to East London, Paul, of course, West Ham were knocked out of the FA Cup by Bristol City. What did you make of that result, and how do you think that could potentially affect David Moyes' future?
Listen, I don't think that one result's going to affect David Moyes' future. I think there's enough talk. I mean, we've talked so often on the pod about West Ham, and there's a real division, isn't there? There's a real division. There's the camp who are realistic and look where West Ham were when David Moyes took over, came back to the club, kept them in the Premier League. He's built them in the Premier League. They are 6th in the Premier League, right? This is West Ham. On the budget they've got, they're 6th in the Premier League. You have a ceiling, okay? West Ham are at their ceiling, in my opinion. I know we talk about the football, and I listened to the radio, I listened to TalkSport the other day in the car, and the West Ham fans were phoning in about Mourinho. So, oh yeah, we'd have Mourinho. But look at the style of football Mourinho plays. And then you're moaning about the way that David Moyes plays, and you want a change, you want that, but yet you take Mourinho. I mean, football's moved on. Jose's football hasn't moved on. You know, he's not won a league for a number of years. He's won a trophy, but David Moyes has just given you a European trophy. So, I mean, it's a whole thing with a West Ham thing. For me, just be careful what you wish for. I understand the new manager, if you go in a new direction, you want to play a certain way, you want to be a little bit more attacking minded with the players that they've got. But the squad for me is the best it's been in a number of years. It's better than it was when Declan Rice was there. They've improved. They've bought some fantastic players. Kudos. I mean, look at Bowen this year. Look at the way that he's playing. I mean, I think he's 2 goals behind Haaland this year is Jared Bowen, which is incredible. So from a West Ham point of view, I don't think that one result is going to affect David Moyes' future. The longer it goes, I fear for him. I like David Moyes. I think he's a fantastic manager in what he's done. I fear for him the longer it goes without getting word that he's in negotiations or there's a new contract on the plate for him. But actually, when you take his whole West Ham tenure and you look at it, they were going to be in the bottom 3. They're a top 6 Premier League side. They're competing in European football again after winning a European trophy, sat in a European place in the Premier League. I mean, what more do you want the man to do?
Pete, do you anticipate him to be offered a new contract fairly soon? Because I think most Hammers fans are quite surprised, actually, that there has been no news at all, not even leaks. There was some talk at some point it might be a 2.5-year deal from this January, but of course, that hasn't been announced yet. What's your anticipation for him?
Yeah, I think David Moyes will be offered this new contract. West Ham, I think, like Paul says, be careful what you wish for. He's done an unbelievable job there at the London Stadium to have West Ham where they are right now, playing in Europe, competing in the top 6 in the Premier League as well. David Moyes, obviously, he's out of contract at the end of this season as well. Talks are ongoing right now. David Moyes is quite relaxed, I think, on the whole situation as well. He knows if that deal was to be taken away, that there'll be a number of clubs who would be willing to offer him a job elsewhere. But I think for West Ham right now, who else is better out there that could replace David Moyes, who they could potentially lure to the London Stadium? I don't think there's many. And I think he's got credit in the bank. He got that Europa Conference League success last year. He's got them in the Europa League last 16 this season and up at the top end of the Premier League as well. So I expect talks to progress over this new contract probably in the next couple of weeks after we get the January transfer window out of the way. And I think both parties will sit down, and I'm confident that a resolution will be made and David Moyes will end up signing a new deal at West Ham. I think it's the right move for both parties for him to build on what he's doing at West Ham right now. Look at the squad. He's used that money from the Declan Rice sale really well. Kudos. Paquetá, the transfer window before, is a top-class player as well. Also like Edson Alvarez in midfield. So I think West Ham are really building something right now. And I think if they can add a couple of players in this January transfer window, I expect them to have a strong second half of the season as well.
They definitely have one of the most exciting attacks in the league, and I think midfields too when they're all fit. But of course, they've been struck as well with some injuries. Jared Bowen has been a bit hit or miss. Of course, as we said, Kudus is injured, Paqueta's out for a long time, and that's certainly going to damage the season, maybe to an extent. But hopefully, if Bowen comes back soon and when Kudus comes back, they can start to turn things around. But Pete, I wanted to draw back there to their January transfer window. It sounded like Moyes is aiming to do some more business potentially in this window. Are there any names or positions that have been identified or targeted?
Yeah, obviously David Moyes is looking to add to his squad. Left wing is one position he would like to add in, and also a striker has been a target since the summer transfer window as well. Steven Bergwijn, the ex-Spurs man, has been mentioned. He's now at Ajax, but I don't think David Moyes is that overly keen in bringing Bergwijn in. A lot will depend what happens with Said Benrahma, who didn't cover himself in glory in midweek with that sending off against Bristol City, but I think West Ham would be willing to listen to offers for him. Potentially also maybe listen to offers for Maxwell Cornet, who played in that Bristol City FA Cup replay as well. But David Moyes, striker is the key priority. They need to bring someone in to help ease the burden on Jared Bowen, who recovering from injury right now, but he's the one that's been scoring all the goals for the Hammers. So they're looking at Armando Broja at Chelsea. He's a long-term target, but again, he's going to be very expensive if Chelsea are to sell. I saw some reports suggesting it would take up to £50 million to sign him, which I think is unbelievable in the current market right now for a player like Broja. And also, they do like Serhou Guirassy from Stuttgart, who has had an unbelievable season in the Bundesliga this year. He's a player that's on the West Ham list for that striking number 9 shirt. And again, he has this release clause of just over £17 million as well. So a lot of competition for his signature as well. But I do expect West Ham to bring in at least a couple of players before the close of the window.
Paul, of course, you have experience. You can tell us, what would Steven Bergwijn bring to the London Stadium? Would it be a positive signing for West Ham fans? What do you make of that deal potentially?
I was excited when he came to Spurs. And then when he scored that volley in his debut against Manchester City, I thought, oh, we've got one here, a real player. But I think to his detriment, he was able to play in too many positions. If that makes sense, with the way that Spurs played, with the 3 behind the striker. He wasn't necessarily a first pick every week. He didn't play as a 9 because Harry Kane played. If Harry Kane didn't play, it was between him and Son, who's played as a 9. He played on the left, played on the right, and he never really got a run of games, never really got going. But his tenacity off the ball, he works so hard. What he brings to the team, if you press him high from the front, he's that type of player who you'd want in your side. I don't think he got an opportunity with a run of games at Tottenham to show properly what he could do, and the move never really worked from him. But I, from a personal point of view, I always thought there was a good player there.
And we spoke earlier in terms of success potentially, and you mentioned be careful what you wish for. What would a success be for West Ham now? As you said, 6th in the table, 6 points off top 4. They're into the last 16 of the Europa League. What should Hammers fans be aiming for or hoping for this season now? Stability.
More of the same. I mean, you look at the top 4. They're not going to break into the top 4. Liverpool, City, Arsenal, title race. Villa are up there. Spurs. I mean, West Ham is 6th. They're above, we talk about teams. We talk about, West Ham, and we say about moaning about the way that they play. Let's talk about some teams who play good football in the Premier League. Newcastle, they're above Newcastle. Brighton, they're above Brighton. Man United at times, they're above Man United. Wolves play good football. Bournemouth, they're above all these teams. They're above Man United, they're above Chelsea, they're above Newcastle, sat 6th in the Premier League, competing in European football at the same time. So for me, success for West Ham, yeah, obviously it's going to be a top 4 finish, and that's going to be real success. But realistic success is stability, another top 6 finish, some more European football while going deep into another European tournament for another year.
What do you make of it, Pete? Do you agree with Paul's points there?
Yeah, 100%. Finishing the top 6 will be a successful season for West Ham. It'll be more European football for next season. And again, I don't think there'll be many teams looking forward to playing them in the Europa League. They showed that last season, last couple of seasons actually, they got to the semi-finals of the Europa League the previous season and then went on and won the Conference League last season as well. So they've got good, decent European pedigree in recent seasons as well. So I think they could go and give a right push for that Europa League. I think they'll be contenders for that trophy as well. But yeah, getting these, they're going to miss Paquetá. I think he's a big miss with his recent injury. He's been sort of the key man in that West Ham side, creating chances for Bowen and Kudos. So he'll be a big miss. But I think David Moyes, he always gets results. They do pick up some big wins. They went to Arsenal over Christmas and got a big win there as well. And I think there's no reason to think that West Ham can't finish in the top 6 again and get more European football. And for me, that is a successful season for the Hammers.
You've just watched a segment from Football Insider's brand new podcast, The Inside Track, with me, Lewis Pearce, alongside the guests on the show. Thanks very much for tuning in. Please do give the video a like, comment your thoughts on the topic, and feel free to share on your social media pages. If you want to listen to the full podcast episode, click the link in the description below. Keep your eyes peeled for plenty more content and exclusives here on The Inside Track.